I'll call this meeting to order. Couple of announcements. Let's see, actually first, let's do the roll call of the directors. Tiffany?
Sure thing. Oh, roll call?
Yep.
Did I do that before?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
And you get a chance to do it again.
How about we'll start with you, Jeff. Are you here?
Here.
Director Perry.
Present.
Director Oyserman.
Present.
Director Shea.
I am here.
And Director Green.
Here.
Yay, thanks.
Okay, all in attendance. Okay, I'll read the preamble here. This will be a virtual meeting of the Marinwood CSD Board of Directors pursuant to Executive Order N-2920 issued by the Governor of the State of California. There will not be a public location for participating in this meeting. Any interested member of the public can participate telephonically or via internet utilizing the web link or dial-in information posted on the agenda. Instructions on how to make public comment during the meeting. At points in the meeting when the chair requests public comment, members of the public participating in the live meeting, either via internet or telephone, shall indicate their desire to speak. If participating via internet, please click the raise hand feature located within the Zoom application screen. If connected via telephone, please dial *9. Okay. All right, moving on to item B, the agenda. Does anyone on the board have any changes to the order or deletions from the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll adopt the agenda as presented, and thank you. Moving to item C, consent calendar. Does any member of the board have questions about either the meeting minutes from May or the May bills paid?
No. I asked my questions before.
Siobhan, you have some questions?
No, I said I asked my questions before. I called
Oh.
Eric.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear you. Bill, you're all set?
Yeah, the only thing is that I noticed last meeting we had the chat, a portion that kept scrolling, and especially at the end you could read everything that people wrote, and we don't have that currently. That would never be entered into the minutes, I'm guessing.
Most likely not,
Yeah,
since I
okay.
believe the feature's been disabled.
Okay.
By the way, welcome, Chief.
No, it's all good.
Okay, very good. And Isabella and Leah, no comments, no questions?
No, it just seems like we have refunded a tremendous amount of fees, but that's to be foreseen given COVID situation. So it is what it is.
Understood. Leah?
No, yeah.
Nothing. Okay. All right. I'd like to invite the public to comment on the consent calendar if they have anything to say.
You do, Jeff. 1 second. Okay, Stephen,
Okay.
you can unmute.
Stephen, okay, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, last meeting, I don't know why we have minutes when we don't actually have very little on the minutes to report. I mean, we're paying Tiffany to attend these meetings. I guess she works full time. I don't know why she couldn't do this off a recording, but really I would like a little bit more detail. For example, in public comments, we have coronavirus SIP. Now, in 5 years, is anyone going to know what that means? I mean, she's basically not reporting what is occurring during the meeting minutes. At least we do have this video recording. And I think in the interest of transparency, especially during this time of virtual meetings, it's imperative that we get accurate reflection of what is occurring in these meetings. That's number one. Number two, on the consent calendar, I echo what Isabella said. We have a lot of refunds, and it'd be very interesting to see that broken out as a separate category. It's actually quite an astounding amount of refunds that were issued there. And I was wondering if we could have a separate line item for that particular expense. That's a question, and maybe Eric can respond quickly.
I know a lot of these refunds were done individually this past month. It's very, very possible that there'll be a one-time check that goes out to ActiveNet next month, so you'll get a better idea of how much is being refunded. I'm not aware of any summation of what was refunded in the month of May.
Isn't that possible with the categories within QuickBooks refunds to do a refund report?
No, it would be captured within the ActiveNet registration software. Refunds at this point are only for programs that we have formally canceled or that were directly requested to be withdrawn from a program. That said, you know, we definitely do have more coming up. We have, you know, pool memberships and things like that are coming along. But with that will also come other revenue for what the programs have now evolved into.
That's nice, but we'd just like to see how much we're down in dollars. It's really hard to see when you have this all in one big report and one summation figure. You really can't get a feel for that large expense. So can we have that done? I mean, I think that's kind of a reasonable in this unusual time that we understand, you know, the budget crisis that we're in. So we can have clarity going into next year's budget.
If I may, I believe we reconcile all our summer program finances at the end of the season cumulatively. So that would be kind of part of that exercise, because it doesn't really matter what we are refunded. At the end of the day, what matters is what the summer program has netted for the district, and we do it annually at the end of the season.
Okay, and there hasn't been any staff reductions either. Is that also true?
That is correct.
Well, there's been summer staff because there's.
We will not be hiring temporary staff in the quantity that we normally would have.
Oh, okay, so you really didn't drop too many expenses. You lost a lot of revenue. That's what I understand.
No, that's not.
No, that's exactly what you said, and I'm just restating it.
Actually, in terms of full-time employees, there have been no reductions that I'm aware of. In terms of seasonal employees, staff was not hired commensurate with the reduction in the programs that are being offered. So the expenses normally allocated to those people will be missing from our expense reports.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about budget fiscal year this year. We have to really have clarity on where we're at right now. With all due respect, figuring out at the end of the year doesn't help us before expenses are incurred. I believe that we're way, you know, with the slowdown of business activity, we're way overstaffed, and like Novato, San Rafael, the county, everybody is considering, either layoffs or furloughs or payroll reductions, temporary payroll reductions. And I'd like to hear, what the board plans to do about it. I'll just leave it there for right now. We can discuss this later on in the meeting.
Can I make a statement about that? Is that okay? All the other districts that you're talking about get sales tax revenue, and so they're getting a huge hit in how much money they're receiving because they are getting less sales tax. We do not get any sales tax, so yes, we are getting a smaller amount of money from our summer camps and other programs, but we also have a smaller amount of staff and expenses that go with those. So from my understanding, from what I've been explained from Eric, and as I walk through the budget with him, we have less expenses and less income coming in. So we don't have a deficit, and we also do not have an increase or decrease in funding coming in like other districts because we do not have sales tax. So yes, there is a reduction, but the reduction is in accordance with how much we are also getting in and paying out. So I think that we can probably continue this later, but the big difference between the districts that you talked about in our district is we do not get any sales tax. So property taxes are property taxes are property taxes.
Thank you, Siobhan.
Move on.
Let's, okay. Thank you, Stephen, for your comments. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
I think there was a tie there, but I'll say Bill and Isabella, since you're in the top line here. Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Oh, where's Tiffany?
No, Tiffany.
Here, I'm here.
Oh, you are
Sorry.
here.
Do you need to see me? Sorry.
No, but please do the roll call vote.
I was eating dinner. Sorry. I didn't think you wanted to watch that.
You don't look hungry anymore. Excellent.
I'm refreshed. I would like to start with Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oiserman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
aye.
and Director Shea.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, consent calendar approved unanimously. Moving on to item D, public comment, open time for items not on the agenda.
Let me guess.
Yes, Jeff, 1 second here.
Yes, Stephen.
Yes. Hi. Hi, Bill. I am hearing all those little comments that you're making, by the way.
Good.
Good. Well, you should talk to me in person and not snipe at me like that. But anyhow, I'd like to point out the fact, I think there may be a little bit of a misunderstanding of where our revenue comes from. Yes, it comes from taxes, but also a broad category called business, which is revenue that comes in on a undetermined schedule. It's a pretty sizable portion of our budget. And so just like every other business, when business conditions change and business slows down, there should be some adjustments going forward. Certainly, I think it can be said that our staff has not been operating at 100% of their normal capacity, given the fact that they have been sheltering in place. It's kind of appalling to me as guardians of the district's funds that you wouldn't take a sober look at ways to streamline operations during this year. We do have tremendous expenses forecast for the district. And, where do you plan to get that money? I mean, you're going to materialize it. I guess you're going to float another bond issue. That's the only thing I can guess. But wouldn't it be better not to have excess expenses at a time when business is slow? These are things that, as our representatives, we expect you to, be on the lookout for us. We're not an employment agency. We're a business. We are a park district. We're a recreation district. We provide services, and we should strive to do them in the best way we can for the people. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your comments, Stephen. I think we're doing our best to make sure that the non-tax, non-fee revenue programs are being appropriately dealt with, and both from the revenue side and the expense side. And I do believe that when we go through the budget this evening, you'll notice that we are not projecting a huge loss for the upcoming fiscal year. Okay, let's see. Is there anyone else that would like to comment from the public that would like to comment?
No, there's
Okay,
nobody
hearing
else.
none.
Yeah, I mean, utilizing the raise hand feature if anybody else wants to make a comment.
Should
good,
we,
Jeff.
should we address the email or no?
No.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no other comments, we'll move on. Thank you. To item E, district matters. Item E1, the draft budget for 2020-2021. Eric, would you like to lead us off?
Yes, please. Thanks, Jeff. So I gave you guys a little bit of a detailed memo here, just kind of refreshing from what was presented last month. Were two hypothetical budget models, one showing no impact to summer due to the public health crisis, and another one showing if we were to shut down all summer programs. As was noted, both showed a level of a net operating gain in terms of revenue over expense, and it was stated at that meeting that the final proposed budget would fall somewhere between those two hypothetical models. So now that we've gotten our final guidance from public health in regards to summer camps, we were able to finish off at least planning for the portion of summer camp. I will say briefly that just Friday afternoon, public health issued some limited guidance towards limited pool operations. From a public pool perspective, we have not had a chance to thoroughly analyze that. So none of that is taken into account here. When staff has a chance to really look at those numbers and see if what is being allowed would make sense to operate, we will address that at that time. So this does not include anything that just came out on Friday, late afternoon, evening in regards to very limited public pool operations as released by public health. As you can kind of see in here, and I think some of the points that were made earlier, especially with our programs, and I've stated this at multiple past meetings, our programs, when you look at the revenue, 75 to 80% of that is caught up in variable expense. That's our part-time staffing, that's supplies, that's trips, that's increased utility usage, everything else. So to be very clear, during our shutdown, we've had dozens, if not closer to 100 staff that have not been working, that have not received any level of compensation, lifeguards who were hired for the pool that did not get to work, preschool teachers who were out of work, after school staff who were out of work, and simply did not have opportunity to earn. And as the expenditures reflect that when you look at the actuals and when you look at what we have put together. The one things I kind of want to also make clear is that this budget is based entirely on what we knew at the time the budget was produced and published, which was regarding summer camp. There is still a lot of uncertainty that surrounds this entire health crisis, and nobody can predict what that exactly looks like. That said, we have been thoughtful in what we put together and conservative in our revenue estimates for our summer camp. I don't know what will exactly happen in the fall, but this is budgeted for fall programming returning to normal with our after-school programs as well as our preschool programs, which without quoting me on this, if things were even to stay the same in the groups that they are in, our registration numbers would most likely be able to accommodate that level of programming anyway with how many kids we typically enroll. So we have not scaled those back yet. And then again, I also have my note that when you're taking a seasonal activity and trying to spread it across 2 fiscal years, that has inherent challenges with it in itself. So as we learn more, not only throughout this summer, but through the fall and leading into spring, I anticipate, several periodic adjustments happening during the fiscal year. I'm happy to answer any questions on this budget in particular. You will see, compared to the model showing no summer, our net gain, so to speak, of revenue over expenditure has increased by about $40,000 to a projected $180,000, and that's after and including contributions to both our OPEB trust and the board designated reserves at the same $100,000 levels that has been achieved in the past years. I recommend at this point in time that the board adopt this budget as presented, but again, taking into account the strong likelihood of future budget amendments as we learn more about impacts to our potential future operations throughout the fiscal year.
Does anyone on the board have any questions for Eric on the budget? I'm seeing 2 no's. Sivan? No?
I mean, no, but I was curious. Do we enroll for the preschool about 12 kids per group? Is that what you're saying?
That's pretty close. Luke, you can
Okay.
you can chime in.
Yeah, we typically take a small handful more in each of the classes, but we would be able to run the program with 12 and still cover expenses, and it wouldn't be a huge change to reduce to 12.
Yeah, I asked all the other questions I had about the budget as proposed to Eric earlier.
Okay, thank you, Sivan. Bill, anything from you?
No, I was just looking at the tree maintenance and the pest. It looks like the pest control climbed significantly this year, and that's why the budget is higher for this budget process now. But I was wondering about the maintenance of the trees and everything. Is that going to come under our wildfire? Does that have anything to do with the wildfire monies that we're going to get, I guess, from the passage of, what was it, Measure C or D?
Let me answer your question in 2 parts. The main increase in the pest control that you saw is because during the year last year, we started implementing a gopher trapping service because they were wreaking havoc on our turfs. So that service, as well as updated costs of our regular pest and rodent and termite treatments that happen around the building, are now all incorporated into there. The tree maintenance line that you're looking at is specific to park. And this is more for diseased, hazardous type trees,
Okay.
not necessarily a vegetation management aspect. So no, I wouldn't imagine those would cross. I think Luke's got something to add.
Yeah,
Okay.
Luke, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And just one aspect, we did have some tree maintenance work planned for this year that hasn't taken place because of the shelter order. A lot of the work was not necessarily deemed essential or to be an immediate hazard. So we haven't done all the maintenance we would normally be doing this last spring season because we're sort of following the guidelines to not do anything that wasn't considered essential. So we would have spent some more of that this spring. It had been a normal season.
We also have a couple outstanding invoices too. So that line that you see with the May actuals will increase by year end when the invoices are processed.
Makes sense. Okay.
Anything else from the board regarding the budget? Okay, I'd like to ask if anyone from the public has a comment on the budget.
They do. 1 second, Jeff.
Oh, yes. F9 on the phone and the raise hand feature if you're on the web. Stephen.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, so I'm really kind of disappointed in this downturn season that we're not doing major maintenance on the pool. We'll have to do that in the future. I know apparently you had someone tell you that you didn't need to do it, but that's a very, very important thing, and probably the most costly thing to the community, because we will not have access to the pool during that time. So this year was the ideal year not to get a double hit on the pool use. So I don't know if it's too late, but I would hope that you would reconsider that. When you talk about, meeting all your budgets, well, from a community member standpoint, we're not getting a whole lot out of the district these days. You're running the summer camp, but in terms of access, we can walk around the park, but we can't go into the pool. We're severely limited in our activities, so we're not really getting our value there. So don't pat yourself on the shoulder and say you've got a positive budget there. No, you're not really delivering services as you have in the past. As far as well, I did say that earlier that I think that this is a time to consider and cutting back some of cutting back personnel to reflect the actual workload being carried. Apparently, you guys don't want to do that. I guess we'll have to talk about that later. You're asking for a tax increase in the fall. Maybe you want to consider these things before you approve this budget. But there's some big outstanding cost, and let's not forget about PERS and the health care that we have do for our employees. We want to take care of our employees, and so this is the number one thing. The other thing is too, during this COVID crisis, we've seen an uptick in the use of the park. People are out walking every day in the park. They love the park, and in particular the elderly and people that you normally don't see walking. They're using the park, which is great. But I don't see anything in the budget where to improve the trails, to put in park benches, to do anything basically for our senior population. And those of us on the upper end of retirement age, it's going to come a lot quicker than you think. And you might actually enjoy sitting on a park bench at some point. So I don't really, I don't see it in the budget, and we keep asking for the same things. And I know you're going to be talking about Measure A tonight, and it's all going into Bill Hansel's project. And I think that you're missing out here because you do have your service to the community to think about.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Appreciate your comments. As a reminder, generally speaking, when we do full replastering of the pool, we'll do it off season when no one is using the pool. This will not be taking the pool away from anyone in the community. Also, doing it ahead of time just simply spends money that we don't need to during this crisis. So let's not forget about the wisdom of our staff who is trying to matriculate through this event and keep those funds for future use. All right, let's see. Does anyone on the board have any other questions?
Just a statement that the kids will be using the pool during summer camp. So
Say
yes,
again? Oh, yes.
the kids will be using the pool this summer. Yes, the community-wide may not be able to, but the kids at the kids at the
Summer
camp
camp.
will be able to use the pool. And most of the kids in the camp are Marinwood residents. That's
Yes.
my statement.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Hearing no other comments, can I have a motion to approve the 2020-2021 budget as presented?
So moved.
Second,
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Tiffany, roll call, please.
Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oyserman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
aye.
and Director Shea.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to,
Jeff, can I just intervene for 1 second? When we have motions and seconds, to make sure that we're very clear on who makes the motion and who makes the second for record keeping for Tiffany's purpose.
oh, okay.
Because
That was,
sometimes it gets a little, I'm getting a thumbs up there. Sometimes it gets a little hard to follow who exactly motioned and who seconded. Tiffany, I'm assuming you captured that with the budget vote there.
I have a motion from Director Green and a second from Director Perry. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you.
I would say by the end of this year, I ought to get this right. Anyway, moving on. Item E2. Resolution 2020-04, determining fiscal year 2020-2021 appropriations limit on tax proceeds. Eric, would you like to lead us off?
Yeah, sure. I'll try to keep this as simple as I can. This really is a ministerial duty matter of the board. You are required every year to pass and adopt an appropriations limit. To be very clear, an appropriations limit does not set tax levels. It does not increase tax levies. And it's not even really based on what our taxes are when it comes to determining the appropriations limit. All data is based on prior year, as well as a formula of numbers that is provided directly from the California State Department of Finance. If you look at the page past the resolution, you can see the factors that go into play. Up top, again, all of those come from what's known as the May report from the Department of Finance from the state of California. These aren't numbers that we produce or we choose. We take it from their report. And to be clear, again, all an appropriations limit is it sets a spending limit on tax proceeds. So it means that we cannot grow our tax spending by levels higher than the appropriations limit will allow you to do it based on those price and population factors from the Department of Finance. And then you also calculate in our voter approved special taxes, which are then applied after you create your general appropriations limit for general ad valorem property taxes. I tried to keep it simple. It's a little tricky to understand. The step is in no way, shape, or form increases taxes to residents, nor does it in any way, shape, or form propose new taxes.
Thank you, Eric. Does anyone on the board have any questions?
No.
No.
Okay, I'm hearing none, and I will open it up to the public for any questions. Again,
Yes. there you
raise
go.
hand or F9 if you're on the phone.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you. It's being called a ministerial procedure because the staff is looking for the blessing of spending up to the maximum amount allowed under law. I suggest, and as it was described, and I don't want to be unfair, that this is based on prior year expenditures. I would like to say this is the year where you pause and you really look at expenses and look how you can do things better. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean that necessarily you're going to spend less, but maybe you'll get more done with the same amount of budget. I think it would be wonderful if you voted against it. I've never seen a board vote against it. I don't know why. I wish you guys would take your responsibility as guardians of the public purse more serious, but please consider that action tonight.
Thank you, Stephen. Is there anyone else from the public that would care to comment?
Jeff, if I could just, there is nobody else from the public, I'm sorry.
Okay.
As a point of correction here, it is not based on the prior year expenditures. It is based on the prior year appropriations limit, which is calculated year over year based on a specific formula. Our tax revenues are actually less than what the appropriations limit was. We won't have that much tax revenue. The formula is set and controlled by the Department of Finance. And again, it's based on the prior year's appropriation limit, not anything to do with expenditure levels.
Okay. If there are no further questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve the Resolution 2020-04 determining the fiscal year 2020-2021 appropriations limit on tax proceeds.
So moved.
Isabella motions.
Sivan seconds.
Sivan seconds. Any further comment?
Just that I had a typo in the resolution, because the resolution is basically copied over and updated every year. And last year you were absent at this particular meeting, Jeff. So the resolution in the packet shows you as absent, which you obviously are not, and will be corrected when the appropriate voting results are updated.
Okay, fair enough.
I
Tiffany?
noticed that.
Ready for a roll call?
Okay, Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oysterman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
Aye.
and Director Shea.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item E3, fiscal year 2020-2021 publicly available. There's another typo. Pay schedule of all positions. Eric?
Sure. For the record, publicly is actually spelled two different ways. Sometimes there's an A in it and sometimes there's an L in it.
Yeah, but there's always a V in available.
I see available in there, a V in available.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah,
Not on my copy.
that's all right. I have smaller type font in here. Again, this is a matter that the district has to approve every year. This does not change or impact any wages. It represents either ranges to wages or in some cases the steps in wages. It does represent increases due to the state mandated minimum wage increase where applicable, and it also represents the fiscal year previously approved wages for firefighter personnel in accordance with their MOU.
Right, okay. And this is what goes on our website, yes?
Correct.
Okay. Questions for the board, from the board? Okay, I want to offer my apologies. The typo was on my form, not yours. So you're cool. Okay, if there's nothing from the board, is there anyone in the, from the public that would like to comment on item E3?
Yes, Stephen's hand is raised. 1 second.
Stephen?
Yeah. So, you know, obviously our staff, when they do a good job, really deserve competitive pay. However, you know, in slow times, maybe this isn't the year to consider expanding that base. I've urged you to consider staff reductions, furloughs, other things to reduce our expenses. And it really seems like you guys are doing business as usual, rubber stamping every request for increased taxes, increased salary, increase number of jobs for the district. And, you know, that's going to bite us because, as you know, every one of these jobs has a lot of expenses attached to them. So probably it's not going to do any good to say it, but I want it to be heard that we need to be prudent during these times. A lot of businesses are closing. A lot of layoffs have happened in the community. Who knows what it's going to do to the real estate market? But you know, I don't think we can. I don't think last year is any indication of what we're going to see this year, or maybe for the next couple of years. So I urge you caution and prudence.
Thank you, Stephen. Again, these are pay schedules. This, other than the fire department, right, which I think firefighters go through a step process. Their MOU is dictated some increases this year. I don't think anyone else is necessarily, other than by moving up a step, going to get a raise, but that's my opinion. If anyone on the staff would like to correct me, please feel free to do so. Okay,
No, you're right, Jeff. Just that minimum wage.
Yep, exactly. I think we had a janitorial position that was up by $1 an hour. Is that correct?
That was the increase in minimum wage.
Yep. Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, I'd like to have a motion to approve the fiscal year 2020-2021 publicly available pay schedules of all positions.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Leah
Isabella?
goes. Leah goes.
I got you, Isabella, with a motion. Who's seconded?
You're gonna second, Leah, or do you want me to second? I'll second. Sivan seconds.
Sivan
Thank
seconded.
you.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, Tiffany, can we take roll call?
Sure thing. Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oysterman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
Aye.
Director Shea.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item E4, Resolution 2020-05, a regularly scheduled election to be held in this jurisdiction. Requesting the Board of Supervisors to consolidate with any other election conducted on said date and requesting election services by Marin County Elections Department. Eric, do you have anything to clarify?
Yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. You've got a board election coming up. There's 3 seats coming up. I've even included information on filing for election in there. And to the best of my knowledge, that's the only election we have coming up this November is for the 3 board seats.
Very good. Okay, any questions from the board? All right, I'll open it up to any members of the public that would like to comment.
Yes, 1 second, Jeff.
Yes, Stephen?
Let the games begin. No, you know, this election is an important election, and I don't know how many of you are going to be seeking re-election, but I will tell you this, that the business of the district is of great concern. You mentioned the email. I guess Eric shared it with the rest of you. I sent it to the district as well as the district attorney and Damon Connolly. I think the Marinwood district is so far out of the norm of open government, ethical government. I think you guys really we need to air this in public. And I think that your relationship with Mr. Hansel and the choice of not disclosing what's going on there and going with a very expensive, very large project that violates our stream conservation area, violates our recreation area, sucks up all our money. I think that's going to be a big issue, you know, and I just encourage you, if you know, you feel that this is really good stuff, then start selling it to the public, because you really haven't sold your plans to the public. You've just basically kept it secret. And my objective is to make sure that people know what's going on. So good luck.
Thank you, Stephen. Are there any other comments from the public? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve Resolution 2020-05, a regularly scheduled election to be held in this jurisdiction, and all the rest.
So moved.
Thank
Second,
you, Bill. And a second from Isabella. Is there any further comment? Tiffany?
Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oysterman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
aye.
and Director Shea.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item E5, temporary construction license agreement between Marinwood CSD and PG&E to allow for PG&E to conduct gas pipeline pressure testing within Marinwood property. Eric?
Yes, so PG&E approached us, I don't know, maybe about a month ago with a proposal to utilize a piece of our property to conduct this testing. As you know, a massive county-long gas transmission pipeline runs right through Marinwood, somewhat parallel to Las Colinas, and then eventually up through into Novato, as well as down all the way to southern Marin. My understanding is they've actually have multiple of these projects planned up and down throughout the county, occurring right around the same time frame, and they're just looking for convenient spots where they don't have to dig up private property and or roadways by which to do the work. This is all part of their safety protocols that they have put into effect. The original agreement went to our county attorney, our county council, our legal counsel for the district. They came back with a heavily revised version of it, which we proposed back to PG&E, and that is actually what you see in front of you. PG&E essentially accepted all of our terms and conditions for them to use our land. This particular area is not a trafficked area. It is close to a few residents, but those residents are also, I actually spoke with one of them last week, are understanding and accustomed to the fact that they even, the one I spoke to has this easement that runs right through his private property as well. They understand it's kind of in the name of safety, and it won't affect, there is one small trail that's in this same general area, but it won't affect that. To be clear, this, the parcel number is, I listed it on there, 164-21104. It is the area off of Heatherstone Drive and Limestone Grade, more commonly referred to as Grasshopper Hill. When I went out to view the property, I actually randomly encountered about 6 PG&E workers out there doing some more of their survey work, and wound up talking to them as well. So they provided some assurances on everything. And said that they didn't feel it would actually take 6 months, but they like to give themselves this opportunity. That said, the compensation proposal is set at the 6-month mark, which was $31,500 by PG&E. The one thing I would state that, they didn't state directly, but that was also, discussed amongst myself and council, was PG&E has a lot of rights and a lot of easement abilities, and they certainly, if they wanted to, could start to exploit some of those rights, because they do have an easement to be able to access their pipeline through and where it runs. So this is basically us agreeing to allow them to do this on district property under our terms, as opposed to terms they could otherwise forcibly attempt.
Thank you, Eric. Does any member of the board have any questions?
I asked mine before.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing none. I've asked my questions, and I've also had Eric confirm that things that I would normally look at in terms of start and stop times of construction, nighttime work, sound, et cetera, all covered within county permitting and are not part of the agreement. I mean, they're not specified in the agreement. They're part of the permitting process.
Their
Otherwise-
responsibility to obtain and adhere to all county permit requirements, though, is specified in the agreement.
Correct. Understood. Yes. Okay. All right. I'll open it up to any questions that the public may have.
Here, 1 second here.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah. So when PG&E started showing up at Las Galinas and Miller Creek Road a couple of years ago, I thought, oh, good, they're fixing stuff. The fire on the peninsula, the terrible fire and explosions on the peninsula was fresh in everybody's memory. But they keep coming back, and I'm wondering what the heck is going on in our neighborhood, because I see them out there all the time. My concern with this, I have no, I mean, I want them to do the work, obviously, but my concern is what risk does the public have to take on with work on that particular piece of property? I'm not familiar with it, so I don't know. But if I live next door to it, I sure would want to know that, because things go boom, and hopefully everything will go well. But so there's that. There's the potential of an unsafe situation for the neighborhoods, but also that would also probably residually impact us should an accident occur and we were found to have leased that property to PG&E. I don't know how that's been explored. I'm sure it was an issue that was brought up, at least by the attorney, but I guess I'd like a little bit of confidence there that you guys are looking at the safety of the community there and granting this access.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes, I believe that a lot of the safety issues are covered, whether in the permit or in the agreement, and also liability and held harmless clauses have been worked on by the attorney. And I think Eric and the attorney have done a good job of making sure that our district is protected. Eric, do you have anything further to add?
It's page 2's item number 4, indemnification, as far as PG&E's sole and complete liability and responsibility, as well as their responsibility to defend the district should that come to that, as well as hold harmless property owner.
Very good, thank you. Okay. Does the board have any further questions? Oh. Is there anyone else in the public that has a question?
No,
I'm
Jeff,
seeing
none at
none.
this time.
Okay, thank you. If there is no further conversation from the board, may I have a motion to approve temporary construction license agreement between Marinwood CSD and PG&E to allow PG&E to conduct gas pipeline pressure testing within the Marinwood territory or property?
Yeah, Jeff, if I could, the recommendation is yes to approve it, but specifically you're authorizing the district manager to execute the temporary construction license agreement.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes. So does anyone have any questions about what that means? Okay. Again, a motion to approve.
So moved.
Isabella, thank you.
Sivan seconds.
Sivan seconds. Tiffany?
Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oysterman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
Aye.
and Director Shea.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we're moving on to item E6, the district manager's report. Eric?
Great, thank you. I'm just trying to catch up in my packet here. Mr. Naylor, 1 second. Okay. Yeah, just a few items in there. I mean, as you can tell by the packet, there's been a lot of stuff we've been working on, and most of it is contained in there. I really wanted to use the opportunity to highlight and make note of the absolute tremendous efforts of all of our staff, really, from firefighters to park personnel, but especially our summer camp staff as well, who have been, throughout, I would say, have been working over 100% and have constantly been dealing with evolving and changing conditions and adjusting to how to conduct work in a more remote setting. They've done an amazing job, and especially these last 2 to 3 weeks as we really started gearing up, having a clear understanding leading up to and then with the final guidelines. They are now attempting to, and not attempting, they are accomplishing in 2 weeks period of time what they normally have a couple of months to accomplish, with basically trying to re-register and figure everything out and doing programs like we've never done them before, having meetings with the school district that I was a part in as well. And they certainly deserve, and I think Luke's going to touch on that in his report, a little bit of an incredible debt of gratitude for their willingness to partner and work with us in the name of providing opportunities for families and kids to have better resources available to them at camp. So again, just I listed them by name in there, but Luke and as our rec supervisor, rec director, and Robin as our assistant rec director, Stephanie, Carolyn, Tiffany should have been listed in there too, just with her work with Carolyn on processing cancellations and everything else. It's I've been doing this a long time with a lot of teams sitting in a management setting, and I'm as proud and as impressed with their collective efforts as I have ever been. So just wanted to take a second in my report to note them because the work they've achieved it's remarkable. And then just a couple other quick notes in there. Obviously, I have a quick note on some of my involvement with the Wildfire Prevention Authority. And I'm sure Chief White will touch on that a little bit more in his upcoming report. And then in terms of vegetation management, once again, kind of highlighting the assistance of the vegetation management inspectors that work for San Rafael Fire Department, and a lot of gratitude towards them and their expertise, as well as their knowledge of the various vendors and the means of how to get things done. We do have one small project that is moving forward. At this time, I remain hopeful it'll actually be reimbursable through the MWPA, but I do have a signed agreement. We're just trying to confirm dates where we'll be bringing goats to come and graze behind the homes on Idleberry, starting basically from the county farm property where Marinwood jurisdiction ends, and running along that, kind of creating a defensible space zone behind all of the homes all the way until you reach Queenstone Fire Road. It's approximately 15 acres that they will be, I mean, obviously there's a lot more acres out there, but that zone is about a 15-acre zone running from that stretch. We are trying hard to get that in before the end of this month.
That'll be
Wow.
fun to watch.
It's usually a
Watch out.
crowd favorite. They do warn, and once that happens, that there is some mild electrical current that runs through the fences that they keep moving as the goats graze along the path. So don't touch the fence.
Yeah. It was a major thing that everybody went to when the stay-at-home order was first in place. It was like the place to be seen.
Well, and again, Chief, please feel free to chime in on this as much more of a subject matter expert than I am. Goat grazing is not an end-all be-all. It is a wonderful first step, and it helps bring down some of the tall grasses and some of the invasive shrubs that go through those areas. But which then helps for some of the larger clearance needs, some of the limbing and some of the removal of some of the dead fuels and things like that. If you have anything else you want to add on that, or just wait till your report, please feel free.
I'll chime in right after I start my report because I've got an area that should segue into that a little bit.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Any questions on the manager report? Okay. Opening up to the public for questions on the direct district manager's report, sorry.
Yeah, 1 second here, Jim.
Stephen?
Yes. So I guess the reason why you guys never have questions is because you've been briefed prior to the meeting of what is going to occur. I'm glad that Eric is happy with his staff. I know those people. They're great people, and I know that they are capable of really good work. It is very frustrating that requests for information, just, you know, activity kind of information of the general manager had to go to your lawyer to prevent any information coming out on what's been going on for the last 3 months. I feel like you're really taking advantage of this situation in unfair ways. I'm glad to hear Saban say that the open space on Idleberry is well used. That's fantastic, and I agree. We're all out in the open space so much more. I really think that there needs to be more district resources spent in the open space, trail maintenance. In particular, we don't want a repeat of the slide situation, and that can be addressed very easily by trail work. You know, you know, there's a big community here. It's not just summer camp and a pool. There's you know, senior community. There's this beautiful open space. There's this wonderful watershed that we are stewards of, and you know, we don't see any effort placed in that. Lastly, I actually, this came up earlier from before. I'm going to just ask you about it. Maybe we'll wait next section, but I noticed you have a rescue vehicle for open space or a rescue basket, and it was unclear to me whether that was just a litter or that was an actual vehicle that's going to be purchased. I'll just leave that out there. Maybe Chief White can address that in his presentation. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Okay. If there's nothing else on the district manager's report, we'll move on. Item F, fire department matters. Item F1, draft minutes of the fire commission meeting, June 2nd. Does anyone have any questions about the meeting minutes? No? Nothing from the board. Does any member of the public have any questions about the meeting minutes?
No.
Okay, I'm not hearing any. We'll move to item F2, Chief Officer Report and Activity Summary. Chief?
Well, good evening, Director Naylor and District Manager Drykerson and the other board of directors and the public members, Mr. Nessel. Thank you for allowing me to join you this evening and provide some updates on some of the current what the fire department is involved in. And I think I'll start with the question that was asked by Mr. Stephen Nessel. I'm not familiar with the vehicle that you speak of, but I will do some research and find out if this was actually just a litter basket for rescue purposes or whether or not there is some other larger request underway that I'm not familiar with. But I don't believe that's the case. So I would probably go along with the mindset that maybe there's some specialized new litter basket that we're looking to replace, maybe some aging equipment, perhaps a metal litter basket that's kind of aged and maybe past its serviceable life. I don't know. I'm just speculating. So start with that. But I'll move on now into just, again, some of the highlights of my report. And please feel free to ask any questions you might have. I'll start with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. And I'd like to provide you with some updates on some of the recent activities. But let me start by saying that there's been a lot of work being put in by a bunch of dedicated and professional and folks working in earnest to try to get key projects off the ground as quickly as possible that will help to draw down risk for this fire season and well beyond. And so with that, I just want to mention that we do have the operations committee that's been working hard. District Manager Drykerson has helped develop bylaws. We spoke to those bylaws just a few days ago, got some input, and I think there's going to be a final version coming forward that may be presented to the board as soon as June 18th. And that's specific to the committee and their efforts to try to understand and be certain about what decisions they're empowered to make versus the governing board. But that being said, there's other committees that are working hard right now. And some of them are working on the year one funding options and budget development. Another committee is working under the Measure C tax administration. The other is working right now on the executive officer recruitment. Yet another, the ops committee is working on the MWPA work plan for 2020. And that's a pretty large undertaking right now. We're trying to align and figure out with that work plan what funding should go under the 3 allocations, one being the 4 core programmatic areas that comprise roughly 60% of the funding. The other is primarily defensible space related, which is another 20% of the funding. And then the last 20% are local or agency specific needs that each agency is able to spend money towards projects that are of significance to them specifically. And so with that, on May 14th, there was comment and public input that came from the Marin Audubon Society and the chapter of the Native Plant Society, which I just learned in conjunction with one other entity, which I can't seem to recall right now, have formed to become something called FERN. And although I don't have the information for the board right now to speak to what FERN mnemonic means, it's really a combination of all the environmental agencies who are trying to come together to ensure that environmental considerations and best practices are utilized to ensure that what's being done right now when it impacts birds, when it impacts possibly endangered species or certain ecological impacts, they're trying to make sure that those things are incorporated into the thought process and into the planning and projects so that there's minimal to no impact as best that they can move forward on reducing or limiting the impact on those very sensitive areas and species. Moving beyond that, May 21st, the Ops Committee presented to the Governing Board of Directors, and they give a progress report and updates on some of the things I just identified regarding the work plan and other activities. Some of the guiding principles for those projects, just for your awareness, include public safety and risk reduction, effective use of public funds, coordination and collaboration among agencies, which obviously was one of the main tenets of Measure C. There was also some lengthy discussion on how you could incentivize voluntary compliance through education and support, as opposed to using the hammer methodology of trying to provide heavy enforcement for compliance with some of the things we're expecting across all zones when it comes to vegetation management and or defensible space requirements. The application of ecologically sound practices and social and environmental equity, as I spoke to earlier, is one of the more vocal and active aspects of what they're trying to accomplish with the guiding principles. As I indicated, the projects fall into 3 main categories. The draft bylaws have been created thanks to District Manager Drykerson, who really took the lead on that. And, the executive officer recruitment is underway. I forgot exactly how many candidates they said they received, but I thought there was some upwards of 50. And the actual application period closes tomorrow. So that being said, there's a real healthy interest in individuals who may be suited and or qualified to pursue this opportunity. There is some question about how many folks are going to actually be the core group that they're looking to interview and move forward in the process. I think there's somewhere upwards of 8 to 12 that will probably be the finalists that they deem to be the most qualified and to move forward for final interviews and vetting. Moving forward from that, I want to get into vegetation management a little bit and speak to some of the things that are Marinwood specific and just important for us as we look at what we're trying to accomplish moving forward for both San Rafael and Marinwood communities. I actually had the opportunity about 3+ weeks ago, almost a month ago now, to meet with Chief Tyler in Novato and Chief Weber in Marin County to understand how their vegetation management programs were operating. And I see stark differences between the two programs, at least for this year. I'm not sure if that's going to continue to be the challenge moving forward, but Novato is looking at wildfire mitigation specialists, which are a highly trained or a higher level of training and a higher compensation group of individuals who would work on a year-round basis, as opposed to the model utilized by Marin County, which is comprised of seasonal staff, paid a bit less and or higher turnover, if you will, with those individuals. But Marin County looks at those individuals as potential future employees. So they're getting their goals accomplished, but I don't know that they're getting the quality they're looking for with that model. And so I'm looking at a hybrid model of the two that I think might work best for our communities in San Rafael and Marinwood. And so with that, we weren't able to access Marin County seasonal inspectors this year because they ran into some difficulty with securing sufficient staff who are interested in the opportunity to be seasonal inspectors. So they were challenged with having enough inspectors to go out and provide the services for the communities that had already been on board with utilizing the Marin County model. So we've actually posted vegetation seasonal inspector positions on CalOps, Western Daily Dispatch. We advertised throughout a bunch of the regional community colleges and by word of mouth. And I'm happy to say, as of last Friday, we had 27 some odd individuals who had applied. We offered compensation that was just a couple of dollars more than what the Marin County seasonal inspection staff were being offered, in the low 20s per hour. Our staff, including Sean Rule, who originates from Marinwood, and Matt Urias and others, are going to be providing those individuals with training. But first, obviously, we've got to go through a questionnaire, an interview process, background checks, and then onboarding those individuals. What I'm really happy to share with you, though, is that last year we had 2 inspection staff, and those inspection staff really only covered roughly a third of the parcels that exist between the San Rafael and Marinwood communities. And that's fairly alarming. I think our efforts this year are looking to hire 6 more seasonal inspectors to go along with those 2 tenured staff and be force multipliers out in the inspection program. And so obviously, Marinwood community is going to benefit from that direct enhancement and increase in inspection staff. And we're going to make sure that we're rolling out 8 people to go out and conduct inspections. And we're hoping to get those out within the first week or 2 in July so that we can really get a robust effort moving forward. The next thing we're also doing right now is we're in negotiation, we're actually finalized and got approval for AmeriCorps from St. Louis to come in and conduct more vegetation clearance, along with the goat grazing that District Manager Drykosen spoke to. The AmeriCorps crews are going to work at helping to do some of the mechanical clearance, as opposed to the goat grazing that really takes place at a very competitive price. We also have Delta crews, from CAL FIRE, who are at a very competitive price that we're going to look to bring in and help be force multipliers towards our efforts to reduce vegetation in both Marinwood and San Rafael. So we've got a multi-pronged approach that we're trying to put forward right away. It's a lot of work. We think that we'll be able to use the AmeriCorps crews to start working on evacuation zones and main roadside areas. There could be a few challenges with using the Delta crews for those projects, just by virtue of the fact that we don't want them working in highly congested, high traffic areas. But certainly the AmeriCorps crews will be part of that effort, and you should start seeing some of their work underway again as early as next Monday. So I'm really happy to share that. I think when we look back on this season as opposed to the prior season, we should be able to see a marked difference in the amount of work we were able to accomplish by the end of the season. That's my anticipation. So any questions on that?
Chief, if I could just ask you briefly to explain the difference between the AmeriCorps St. Louis crew that you're referring to versus the AmeriCorps in CCC grant that eventually got withdrawn by AmeriCorps that we were working in partnership with them.
Absolutely. From what I understand, speaking with Quinn Gardner, the CCC crews are probably not quite as trained and not as well equipped as the AmeriCorps St. Louis crews, not as experienced, probably require more oversight and more coordination than those other crews who are very seasoned, understand what they're doing. You can almost plug and play with them and walk away. They're just honed in from what I understand, and they're better equipped and better trained overall. And so I think if we look at it from that vantage point, we actually are better off with AmeriCorps St. Louis right now than we will be with the CCC. Not to discount CCC's efforts, but clearly if we were going to lose both, we'd be in a bit of a predicament. But I think we have an advantage right now going with the St. Louis crew. And so with that, they're going to be housed at one of our locations on Joseph Court. And we're looking at a 6-week window for them to be able to operate. And then that may be upped again later on towards sometime after the summer and early fall. They may come back and work for another 6 weeks. So we really anticipate getting a real significant contribution from the St. Louis AmeriCorps staff.
Right. And then I would also add there is a significant cost difference involved with bringing on a St. Louis crew versus being awarded a CCC crew.
Yes, that's true as well. We'll move on to another section of my report, and I hope you find a little bit of value in this one. I'm going to skip over real quick and come back. I wanted to speak about a promotion where Captain John Papanicolaou has successfully completed his captain's probation. So I went over and spoke with him and the crew and pinned his badge and congratulated him, much in the spirit of how Chief Gray had actually provided that same personal attention to staff once they're successfully beyond their probation or have successfully completed their probation. It's a little different than what I'm accustomed to. In the past, we would give someone a badge and we send them on their way, and probation came and went without any real acknowledgement of their accomplishment. And I'm glad to see that there's an opportunity here to kind of just express some appreciation and give some added encouragement to the company and chief officers and other individuals who actually have successfully completed probation. It's a worthy thing to actually acknowledge. Sometimes you can do it in front of their families, as I did with one of the captains in San Rafael recently. But I think the big celebrations on the front end that they actually made it and were successful on the list and promoted. But this is still equally important because sometimes you'll find that some individuals may not be suited and would like to revert back to their prior rank, or for whatever reason, it's just not a good fit. But in this case, it looks like you guys selected well. So Captain Papanicolaou is a permanent captain now in Marinwood. So
Congratulations to him. That's well done.
absolutely.
Yes.
I guess the last thing I'd like to speak on is the Pacific Gas and Electric public safety power shutoffs update provided to staff just recently. They had a presentation on the 3rd of last Wednesday, the 3rd of June. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend that, but I did receive a lot of information from Quinn Gardner, who was able to attend in my absence. Some of the information I had already been familiar with, but she gave me some other additional highlights that I thought were important to speak to. One of which is PG&E is hosting another WebEx meeting for the community on June 10th, tomorrow. So please take a look at that link and consider joining that just to get more information that's going to go above and beyond what I'm going to share with you right now. In their efforts to try to get ahead of the likelihood of additional PSPS events coming up this season, PG&E has taken a bunch of steps to try to improve and or reduce the impact of PSPS events in Marinwood, San Rafael, and other communities. Some of the things they've done are kind of very meaningful if you look at it. They have a temporary microgrid as an example, where they're looking at possibly being allowed to safely energize certain areas within a community where they don't think there's going to be a significant issue or concern with powering up those areas. And so being able to isolate certain areas within the community is going to be helpful, especially when you're talking about areas of the community where maybe there are vulnerable populations, individuals who have medical needs that you can't really discount, and or those individuals may not have access to family members or transportation, and any other number of challenges that may exist. And so those microgrids are going to be very helpful, I think, if they're able to actually employ those the way that they've been designed. In addition, they've increased the number of inspectors to inspect the lines. They're undergrounding more lines. I understand they've got literally hundreds of miles that they need to do undergrounding, which, is, you can imagine, undergrounding takes a lot of time and resource, but it's something that they're actively doing. And they increased the number of helicopters, one of which unfortunately had an accident, I believe, last week, which led to a fatality. But they upped them from 35 to 65 helicopters to go out and inspect lines. And so I'm not really sure how they intend to inspect lines with the helicopters. I'm not sure if they're using infrared or some other means of looking at how a line is powered or energized, and whether or not there's some interruptions in current or some other methodology they use by doing an aerial assessment. But they're considering, I guess, that aerial assessment is going to be able to actually help them cover more ground and or identify trouble spots sooner. Community Resource Center, they're looking at making some modifications to the models that were used last year, in that they're trying to take into consideration the fact that we have COVID reality and reduce the potential for individuals to come within that 6-foot radius of one another, and or providing things that really make sense to ensure that there is no impact, either by staggering who's using it and when, or what services are available at those community resource centers. And so there's some adjustments they're making there, just in light of what we're dealing with right now. And then they've installed new high-def cameras in a lot of the high-fire threat areas. And so that's going to help them get eyes on problems maybe a little bit sooner than they had been able to before, especially when you consider the value of those cameras and how they've been able to identify things in years past. Long time ago, well before I became a firefighter, they had lookouts. And these fire lookouts would go and position themselves in high towers and look over vast areas of forest with binoculars, and they would just do their due diligence day in, day out, and identify situations that existed miles away. But these were the watchouts and the lookouts. These cameras are going to serve in much the same manner. And so it's, again, a very effective means of trying to get ahead of a problem. So with that, I just wanted to kind of summarize again the fact that there is a lot of work being done right now. And I'm optimistic that as we move forward, the MWPA and the vegetation management efforts of staff will really start to yield some significant changes and or risk reduction in the Marinwood community moving forward. So if there's anything that anyone would like to ask about what I've just shared or any other part of my report, please feel free.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone on the board have any questions for the chief? That was a very thorough report. Bill?
Very thorough.
Nothing?
It was awesome.
Okay. Thank you again for the report. Any members of the public like to ask questions of the chief?
Yeah, Jeff, 1 second.
Yeah, Stephen, go ahead.
Hi. Chief, thanks for the really good report. I have a number of questions. I'll just start with the COVID. I know there's been a number of cases in the 94903 zip code, Terra Linda and Marinwood. And of course, just wondering if any of our first responders have been exposed to COVID, and have they been, furloughed or whatever, because we're calling on all these senior facilities where I assume most of these outbreaks have taken place. So that's number one. Number two, I'm actually kind of surprised because of the weather that we haven't had a shutdown. Last year we had hot windy weather, and we've had that just this week, and actually quite a number of times in this last 30 days. glad that we don't have a blackout on top of COVID shelter in place, but I guess I'd like to get a feeling for whether or not we can expect that later on, or they're going to maybe table the program until maybe next year. And then lastly, on the fire incidents page, the first incident that you had is Deer Valley vegetation fire that was out on Silvera Ranch. Now, I may be wrong. I've never heard of that area being referred to as Deer Valley. But I called in that report with other members of the public, and there was not a car there. So I don't know, this information appears completely wrong to me, because it was right in the middle of the field. It looked like it was a spontaneous combustion fire. So you may want to, just correct your records if maybe you got incidents mixed up or something like that, but there was no car in that field. I can say that for certain. So a couple questions concerning COVID and PG&E, and maybe you can also respond to that vegetation fire if you know anything more on that.
Absolutely. I'll start with the latter first. This information was provided to me by my staff, so I had assumed that they had very accurate information about whoever the reporting party was and what they may have witnessed, and or what information came to the dispatch center to indicate what may have been the cause and origin. And so with that, I can't speak to why it's called Deer Valley. I'm assuming perhaps there's an exit nearby. Maybe that's what the arriving incident commander named the incident, because that's something that we do also. We don't necessarily name an incident in a way people might expect. This could have been called Deer Valley Command. And so with that, I would ask for your knowledge, because you're obviously more knowledgeable than I am about where this is exactly located. Is there an exit? Is there a area over here that's known as Deer Valley Road or Deer Valley Way or Deer Valley Street as an example?
No, that would be Miller Creek Road exit.
Okay.
And that is right in the middle of Silvera Ranch, which is a well-known landmark. I mean, it's not a big deal, but maybe for records, you'd want to get that straight. I don't know. Anyhow, so that's not a big deal. I just
really look into it and find out, so that way, as our incident commanders, arrive on scene, they use good landmarks, good locations. Again, you can name almost any incident, any kind of command you want. It's not as important to us that we be accurate about what the name of command is, more than it is that you're consistently using incident command and everybody understands where the incident is located and what's going on there. But it's certainly worth looking into, so I'll try to get an answer about that. As far as PG&E and their willingness to shelve the PSPS program, I think they feel like last year their operations were a success in reducing the number of potential incidents. So I can't see them wholeheartedly shelving the program. I think they're looking to scale back the use of as many PSPS shutdowns as they possibly can. But only we can just cross our fingers and hope that somehow or another we're not impacted by the conditions that are ripe for another PSPS decision that's being made. And those things vary from wind conditions to humidity to weather reports to conditions of any number of historical references and markers that they use to identify the potential for an incident to take place in a specific location. And so that being said, when they combine all of those factors, they make a decision whether or not to trigger a PSPS. And they don't take it lightly from what I understand. They want to make sure that they don't see a repeat of the campfires and the other incidents that have occurred across the state where there's been massive destruction and loss of life. So I would, although I was not originally a big fan of PSPS, I see and understand why they're doing it. I think the more effort they can put forward to reducing our risk, and the sooner they can get out and inspect and re-inspect lines, the faster they can actually put or reduce the impact of the PSPS. And that's one of the things that they actually claimed, is that they're looking to actually scale back and get a PSPS event after the event dies down to make sure power is restored within 12 hours in all areas. That's one of their new targets. So we'll see if they're able to live up to it. And then as far as any COVID positive results. Not since my arrival, I believe, has there been any indication that any Marinwood staff have tested positive. We have had our individuals respond on a number of positive individuals, but none of us, I think, have tested positive, thankfully, and had to require isolation or anything else at this point. And I attribute that to good fortune. I attribute it to our efforts to use best practices and how many personnel have to actually engage with someone that we consider suspected of potentially having it or confirmed of having it. I also attribute that to the processes we use, what we call a hot, warm, and cold zone, when we go back to quarters and we start decontaminating after each call. I attribute that to the efforts to decontaminate and clean and disinfect stations and our apparatus and our equipment. I think those things that we're doing have really reduced our potential risk. And I think if you look at the number of incidents that are occurring in Marin County, we're one of the better counties around in the way of total number of cases and or total number of fatalities that have occurred. And so that also translates into individuals adhering to the shelter-in-place order, washing their hands more, respecting social distances. So I think our fire departments have also contributed to that by being responsible as well. So as much as I have, Mr. Nestle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Isabella, do you have a comment?
2 items. I believe the Deer Valley name came from the name of the road that the vehicles probably used to access the fire. It's coming from the Lucas Valley Road as opposed to Marinwood. So it's when you take Lucas Valley Road up north and then turn left, there is Deer Valley Road that might have provided access to the vehicles. And what was the second one I wanted to? Oh, the COVID infections. Is that something that would be covered by HIPAA, or is that information that would be shared with everyone because of the public safety?
I believe there's some exception to the HIPAA when it comes to first responders, making sure that they can be tested and verified for possible exposure, whether it be Ebola, whether it be COVID, whether it be any number of communicable diseases. So I think while we're looking at HIPAA and we're trying to ensure the public doesn't get information from what we write on our electronic patient care reports, as an example, there is something that we can do for first responders to confirm whether or not we've been exposed or potentially have at least been in proximity to someone who's considered a PUI, person under investigation. And then oftentimes we're waiting to hear information and feedback. And I can tell you in my past life, sometimes we never hear back from the hospital staff, and we'd have to do a lot of follow-up with our infection control officer to try to get information. But generally speaking, I think we've been very successful in trying to get information in this particular situation, because people recognize that we could be individuals who could spread the COVID as well if we come in contact with someone and we haven't done our due diligence and continue to monitor our own staff for their well-being.
I think there's also part of the contact tracing is if somebody had tested positive at some point within 2 weeks of having been picked up by the fire department, right? Wouldn't the health department have to contact due to?
They would, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would hope that they would. But we're pretty good on our end of making sure we try to follow up with the hospital and the health department to ensure that we get some information about anyone we suspect or we may have gotten some form of confirmation that may have been exposed or may have tested positive.
Very good. Any further questions from anybody on the board? Steve, thank you very much for your report and your responses.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to item F3, next Fire Commission meeting July 7th. I'm noting that it does not say tentative. So we're back on schedule for our commission.
Yeah, they met, as you saw, obviously, at the beginning of the month, which was an interesting process, given the makeup of that particular commission. But the intention is to continue meeting.
Virtually.
Very good. Okay. All right, we'll move on to G. Item G, Park and Rec matters.
Thank you, Chief.
Um,
Have a good, safe drive home.
Thank you. Take care now.
Right, thank you, Chief.
You're welcome to stay.
I think I'm gonna go have dinner. Thanks.
All right.
All right. Item G1, fiscal year 2020-2021 Measure A work plan. Eric, do you want to comment?
Yeah. So every year the district is required to submit a work plan to the county open space district, which oversees the Measure A funds. It's actually not required that it goes through a board approval level. That's just an extra practice that we have done since inception, and I agree with continuing to do it. As you can see what I put in there, they're actually predicting, not predicting, they have an estimate for a potential of 25% loss in total revenue to Measure A, because Measure A is 100% funded through sales tax. And when you shut down 95% of all sales tax revenue generating sources, you get a hit. So you can see that rather than the closer to 90, they've moved it down to 70,000 in this particular instance as an estimate for next year. And we'll just have to wait and see what winds up happening. As you can see right now, we have an approximate current balance of about 314,500. Adding the 70,000 to that would be around 384,500. And the staff recommendation is to just continue with the primary capital expenditure project with the maintenance facility replacement project moving forward. That said, should other items, amending the Measure A work plan to add other items is a very simple process throughout the course of the year, should those funds be needed for something else. But we have been able up until this point to manage other needs utilizing money from our park budget and general fund.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone on the board have any questions for Eric regarding this Measure A work plan?
No.
Okay, I'm seeing none. Then I'll open it up to the public. Yes, Stephen.
Yeah, hi. Once again, basically, all this money is going into Bill Hansel's dream project. When we the voters voted for this, we voted to enhance our parks, to add more recreational facilities like playgrounds for kids, restore wildlife, make sure that seniors have stuff like park benches, and none of this money has gone to that. Now, I honestly, I don't know what kind of Svengali control Bill Hansel has upon the district, but it apparently, you're shamelessly putting it into this project when all we really need is a place for tools and some vehicles. It's a very simple structure, like as is found in virtually every facility in Marin and the state. No one goes for custom design features and showers and all that kind of stuff for a small district and a small park like ours. I think it's frankly an embarrassment. I know you've gone deep on this. You don't want to talk about the budget, which it really scares me, because it seems to me that it's going to be more than our wildest imagination. And how you justify it, I honestly don't know, but be prepared to discuss this and other items and the relationships that you guys have, because this is our park. This is, this park belongs to all of us. It belongs to future generations. And if we're not doing the right thing here, we're really stealing from future generations as well as the community. Please, utilize these funds as the way that they were intended. Handicap access, we need more bathrooms, handicap bathrooms in the district. We need the park benches, the safety features like the handrail that Linda and I have been advocating for. And we need to restore these eroded trails. And that's what the Measure A funds were intended for. You go back to the original language. Anyhow, you guys do what you're gonna do, but we're watching.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay.
Hey, I'm sorry, Jeff, if you don't mind, if I could, to be clear and put it out there. Since the inception of Measure A funds, some of the projects that it has funded has included new flooring for the reception hall, as well as a new storage area besides the community center. It installed HVAC into areas of the community center that didn't currently exist. It has applied repairs to tennis courts, including new top coat resurfacing, several pool equipment repairs and equipment additions to that as well. It's taken care of wood trim and other outside maintenance needs of the community center. It has also purchased a couple of park vehicles, one being the maintenance truck, one being the smaller utility vehicle, the Kawasaki Mule. And it's, again, touched every tennis court up and down that we own in terms of that. So the money has certainly gone to a lot of the other improvements and not just a sole project.
Thank you, Eric. That's good information to share. If there are no other questions from the board or the public, I'd like a motion to approve the fiscal year 2020-2021 Measure A work plan.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Leah and
I'll second.
Yvonne.
Sivan.
Tiffany?
Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oyserman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
Aye.
and Director Shea.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item G2, P&R maintenance report. Luke?
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone. So the main theme for this last month, and especially this last couple weeks, has been gearing up for our summer camps. As Eric mentioned, and thanks for the kind words, Eric. Our sort of green light to move forward with running summer camps came on May 22nd. And every minute since then, the recreation staff has just been hustling to get this program up and running, and doing, a few plus months of preparation in a couple weeks. And it's been a whirlwind, to say the least. Thankfully, we did expect a lot of what was in the health order, allowing us to run camps, and we predicted fairly accurately. So we didn't have to necessarily change what our expectations were, but we just had to start getting everything in place and starting to finalize how we were going to run our summer program in accordance with the health guidelines, which has been a very, very big challenge, to say the least. But I've been very impressed with how the staff has adapted and adjusted and hustled, and you would be very surprised with some of the hours that people have been working this last couple weeks to get everything in place to be able to do this. Some of the major changes that I highlighted in the report that are going to occur to our camps this summer, one being is a big reduction in our enrollment. We are forced to run camps of no more than 12 participants. And normally most of our summer camp groups would have around 40 to 42. So that's a big reduction in what we're allowed to, or what we're able to offer. The camp groups cannot mix. We can't have the same groups in the same room or the same facility at the same time. We can't have staff move from one group to another group one day to another. It has to be they call them stable groups, and the sessions now have to be 3 weeks long instead of 1 week. So we have to have the same group of kids with the same dedicated staff, not mixing it all for 3 weeks at a time, which is a big change for us and for all the parents and families that we normally serve. So that's been a big adjustment. There's a lot of extra cleaning and sanitizing that goes on anytime that a group uses a facility that's going to be used by another group at another time. We have to clean and sanitize every thing that's been touched, and just a lot of hand washing, hand sanitizing, cleaning of equipment and materials and supplies throughout the day. So it's something that we were planning ahead for just in case. And so we did have a head start, I think, compared to some other agencies. I'm really happy about that. But it's been a lot of planning and sort of starting from scratch in some ways with how to run our program the best way we can and provide sort of that Marinwood summer magic with these confines. So that's been a big thing that we've been dealing with this last few weeks. And part of that is the logistics of transferring the hundreds of kids signed up for normal camp that we were expecting to run back in February into this new program. And there's been just a lot of unprecedented logistical nightmares with refunds and transfers and how to go about it. And our system has not quite cooperated with that process the way we were hoping. But thanks to Carolyn for leading the charge on the background and the logistics for all that, and putting a lot of hours and a lot of phone calls with our software company, and just a lot of brainstorming and how are we going to make this puzzle kind of fit together. And we're thankfully less than a week away. We're finally there, and we're feeling really good about starting camp on Monday. So our first session will start this coming Monday on the 15th. Our camps are full. We're running all the same camp groups that we would normally run, just with the limited enrollment, which also comes with a limited amount of staffing to run those groups of 12. And we will be making full use of our facilities. The camps do thankfully get to use the pool, but only one group at a time. So making that schedule was incredibly challenging as well. And we, in order to get some more room time, when we can't have multiple groups in a room at a time, it's been very limiting. We were able to pursue an agreement with the school district to allow us a greater use of Miller Creek Middle School. And thanks to Eric for helping establish that conversation. And the school district has been very generous with us, or to us, and allowed us to get 5 good classrooms, along with the use of the gym, bathrooms, blacktop, and field. And that's going to allow us to give all of our camps some indoor space in a very significant way, and get some break from the sun. And it'll be very helpful for us, especially with the bathroom use. So we're very grateful that the school has come through for us, and that's going to allow us to spread out a little bit more this summer and meet all of our guidelines. So that's been a big challenge, but we've kind of made it over the hump, and I'm very pleased with where we're at right now in preparation for that. And we're on board to have everything start up on Monday morning. So that should be exciting. Couple other changes that we've gone through. We're not going to be doing any field trips. We're not going to be able to bring in outside entertainment. And we had to cancel our overnight adventure that we send a lot of kids on every year. But thankfully, we have an amazing set of grounds and property to use, and we'll be spreading out and being very creative in how we keep things interesting and exciting and creative for the camps this summer. Oh, and one thing just to note, and I'm sure most of you are aware, we in making a reduction of I think around between 60 and 70% of the participants that we normally have, and everyone's circumstances changing and us changing from 1-week sessions to 3-week sessions, it was pretty challenging to figure out how do we determine who gets to be in camp this summer. And we ended up, to be fair, just went to a random drawing, which we started with residents that had been signed up previously, and then to non-residents that had been previously signed up for camp. And we're finally able to get the camps filled up doing that. And that turned out to be a very long and drawn out process. And we would never do that again, but it worked out. And after a lot of parents changing minds and a lot of back and forth, I think Carolyn's averaging, I wrote it in here, some ridiculous amount of emails a week this last couple weeks. We finally, 2,000 emails last week when I wrote this report out. It's just a lot of back and forth. We would definitely do things differently next time, but we made it happen, and I think we're finally able to, we're able to accommodate 164 kids a week, which I think Robin tallied up for me today that we're serving, I think around 320 unique campers this summer. So we will probably be the largest childcare program in Marin County this summer, and we're very happy that we have the staff and the facilities and the resources to be able to provide that many of our local families with childcare. So happy that we're able to
That's over the
move forward
3
with that.
sessions. Sorry.
Yes, for the whole, throughout the whole summer. That's how many individual kids will be able to come to camp this summer. And I know a lot of places are offering a much smaller program just because of all the limitations on room use and staffing and everything. So I'm very pleased that we're able to offer that program this summer, and we'll see how it goes. For the pool, just to speak a little bit about that, Eric mentioned briefly that we were able to, we got some guidelines allowing for pool use in some capacity that came out on Friday. And like he said, we haven't had a chance to explore that fully to see what we're able to make happen. As of right now, the camps are allowed to use the pool with very limited use, so one group at a time, and we're excited to be able to do that. And we will be looking at what else we're able to accommodate this season. Once we kind of get camp up and running next week, staff will sit down and strategize to see what's going to make sense, what's feasible, what's affordable for opening the pool for beyond camp use. So there are a lot of restrictions with using the pool in terms of how staff are able to perform the necessary rescues, and if there was an emergency, how they are able to limit contact and stay safe. And a lot of guidelines have come down through various agencies, and Stephanie and I have been looking through those, and we're training the lifeguard staff this weekend with some updated protocols to be able to provide a safe environment at the pool and respond to emergencies, but also keep our staff and our patrons as safe as possible during this COVID-19 situation. So that's been challenging, but a lot of resources have come through the local aquatics community that we're looking at, and so we should be all ready to go by Monday for pool use, and we'll be looking at what we can do beyond that in the coming days and weeks. We've got some other programs we'll be unleashing after we get camp up and running, some things for families that are still sheltering at home to be able to do to engage with our open space and trails, and some other scavenger hunts and fun things that we'll be releasing online that we'll be announcing in the coming weeks, and we're excited about that. Before I move on to the parks maintenance section of my report, is there any discussion about recreation questions?
Yeah,
I just
thank you
wanna-
for the teasers about possibly adding some programs to the pool. You got me on tenterhooks at this point.
Well, hopefully that was the right teaser to tease out there.
I'll look forward to further information when you can supply it. Very good.
And I just wanted to say thank you to you and to Robin and to Carolyn and to Stephanie and to Tiffany and of course Eric. It's been insane, and everything's changing minute by minute, and the fact that you guys got this going, and we'll see how well things work, but I'm amazed and I applaud you guys. Thank you for all the hard work. I know that there was some days that were beginning that had less work, and now it's piling on, but thank you.
Yeah, thanks for saying that.
Especially when we're all trying to do it with kids at home.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. No, it's been great. The staff have been absolutely fantastic during this process. I'm very grateful to have such a good crew that is seasoned and willing to put the time in to make this happen. It was definitely a new and unprecedented challenge, but it was, yeah, we made it happen. So on the parks maintenance side of things, the crew has been getting things ready for camp, doing some turf treatment, getting the pool up and running after sitting dormant for a couple months. And so there's been a lot of cleanup around the facility and a lot of preparation for the kids that'll be showing up on Monday and the families. We've had a few years this last month. One major one we just we're working on today is or this last week, a broken water main down on the far field. And we've had a lot of, I don't know if you guys have been tracking this, but it seems like a lot of leaks and pipe repairs recently. And it seems that a lot of these pipes and connections were established back in 1987. I think we were tracking today. And I think a lot of things are at their usable lifespan, and we're starting to see some things start to crack and leak, and we've just had repair after repair after repair. But thankfully the crew has gotten very good at that, and we've just been solving them a day at a time. So it's been good to get those things wrapped up. We've had a lot of that to deal with this last spring. One kind of exciting project we ended up with this couple of weeks ago was we took down a large tree house that had been constructed in the open space that was proving to be a liability for the district, and it's sort of sad to have to see it go. But we went out there with one of our tree contractors that we use a lot and dismantled and took that down and had to haul out a lot of lumber, and that was a fun project in some ways, but also felt a little bit bad taking that down. And we also removed a tree near the playground that was diseased and rotting out from the inside, and so that was another project we used that same tree service for that same day. Upcoming projects just include some repairs in the kitchen and classroom. We've got some signage that we're putting up in the open space with all the trail use that's going on. There's been a lot more traffic, a lot more bike traffic and foot traffic, and we have printed out had some signage made to help people know what trails are for bikes only, what trails are for foot traffic, and we'll be trying to kind of educate the hiking and biking public a little bit better now that we have some of these connections from the new trail out there, and all the increased traffic will be hopefully giving people a little bit better indications of where they should be and where they can be. And we'll be working on that in the coming weeks as well. And then just trying to keep up with the demands of maintenance around the facility as we have a lot of kids and families out here this summer. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. So the piping material that we continue to have leaks, is this like PVC piping or? What?
Yeah, it's PVC pipe. A lot of just collars that connect different sections of pipe. That's sort of a weak spot that they wear out over time, and they're all very kind of obvious spots where the leaks happen, and they've been fairly small leaks, but yeah, just replacing the collars, it's been pretty straightforward.
I see. Okay, fair enough.
Are the playgrounds open again?
As of right now, the playgrounds are closed until further notice due to the high touch common area. They have not released any guidelines allowing for playground use. I have not received an indication of where that is on the list or how long
That's
it will
fine.
be. But
Just a heads up, as of yesterday, the sign that was connecting the two baby swings in the mini park was clipped down.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll have to, thank you. We'll be having to kind of keep.
I haven't
signage
been
up.
on our main area, so I can't tell you anything about that, but we rode by and I did a visual inspection as we rode, and
I appreciate
trying
that.
to ignore the groaning of my child who felt like physical activity should not be occurring. So
Right, and it was, I'm surprised those were actually stayed up as long as they did, but yeah, we'll have to be kind of keep enforcement. People have been fairly good about staying off the playground from what we were able to witness day to day, but I'm sure there's been a little bit of activity out there.
yeah, okay.
Yes, the red pail moved last week.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, no problem.
Did it move a foot or just a couple of inches?
No, clear across the.
Sorry.
Does
It
anyone
was-
else have any?
It was
Go ahead,
pretty
Jared.
windy last week, I'm just saying, so.
That's true.
I didn't do any fingerprinting or anything, but that's possible. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Lou? Okay, I'll open it up to members of the public.
Yeah, 1 second, Jeff.
Yes, Stephen.
Yeah, I have questions and comments in both sections of Luke's report. I'll start with the first. You know, congratulations to Luke. I know I've known Luke for a number of years, and I know he's very creative in his skills, and I'm sure he's going to do a great job this summer along with his staff. So, real excited about that, and I guess we'll see. I was actually surprised that we're going to be doing summer camps, given the fact that a lot of businesses are still shut down. But right now, with the health orders the way they are, they don't make any sense to me. But I was a little anxious about the sanitation. I just think it's a big challenge to begin with. I guess we're going to have about 200 kids in the facilities, Luke, or during at one time, as opposed to 500.
Not quite. Altogether, there'll be about 160 kids on the grounds, but they will not be all utilizing the facility. So we won't see all those kids going through the community center. We will not see all those kids in the same spot or utilizing the same aspects of our facility. They'll be very kind of keeping to their own spots for most of the 3-week period that they're at camp.
Okay, so I understand kids aren't, you know, depending on which health report you want to see, but the indication is that kids are not, you know, really affected by this disease, which is really wonderful. And the fact that you're spreading them out between Miller Creek and our community center, that's great too. But you know, I'm kind of curious because we don't have that many bathroom facilities at Marinwood, you know, community center. You know, how do you manage stuff like keeping like the toilet area clean? Is there a new protocol that's required? Can you just, I guess in general, what I'd like to hear is what the health protocols are. Is staff going to be wearing masks all day? Is that only going to be occasional, or maybe it's not necessary? You know, and then as far as the sanitation, how does that work? And then if after you answer that, I have some more questions concerning some other things.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Stephen. And yes, there are some very specific guidelines laid out for all of that. For facilities that do need to be shared by campers and staff, such as restrooms, where we don't have one restroom per camper or even per group, there are protocols for one group at a time. We'll be using the restroom. The common touch areas, such as handles and door handles, and sink handles, and et cetera, will be sprayed and wiped down after use before another group goes in. Staff will be wearing masks throughout the day, and we do have a specific set of protocols for sanitizing equipment, facilities before and after each use, especially if there's going to be a different group coming through that area. We leave time between for sanitation and for cleaning between everything. And it's very laid out and very specific. We'll be following all of the Health and Human Services Department's guidelines for how we approach our facilities and how to sanitize between groups.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So basically, you're not wiping down a toilet after every kid use it, but the 12 germ collectors stay together, and you basically you're taking care of your group, and that makes sense to me. Okay, as far as the pool goes, I'm also excited about the potential of swimming in the pool, but I'm actually not going to hold my breath on that. But if you can work it out, I'll be interested in that, and I'm sure many of us lap swimmers will will also want to know about a program, even if it's, you know, a couple hours a day, you know, that would be just fantastic. Now, as far as your staff is concerned, back down to the parks and maintenance, is your staff 100% on duty now, you know, during the normal hours, or are they still taking day turns coming into work?
Due to the nature of what we have to prepare for and all the work at hand, we have staff is working normal schedule as of right now.
Okay. How long has that been going on for?
The last
Week?
last couple to few weeks, to double check when we started that.
Okay. All right. So as far as, okay, so, and I notice you've taken down some more trees, and I don't know, there are a couple things. They are protected trees that you're taking down. As you know, I know that you say that they're diseased, I guess. I don't know how you're determining that, but I know these are protected trees and they're coming down within the stream conservation area. Also, as you're aware, I don't think you got back to her. Linda talked to me. I guess one of your staff was driving the gator through the creek, which is like horrendous. So I don't know. I'm really disappointed that there's no, you know, not that much environmental awareness on your staff on how to treat open space versus park space. It really needs to be treated with care. The reason why we have so much erosion in the park is not because of the public, it's because of the Parks Department driving heavy vehicles on it in the wrong places. And so, you know, as much as I like you guys, I really, I get furious that you guys do not take the simple care that is needed to, you know, make that open space look good and stay in a natural stay in a natural setting. Also, you know, you're once again, I mean, I said this to Eric, I'll say it to you. I mean, you're basically taking care of the center, you're taking care of the camps, you're taking care of a few things. The open space, that's that huge unused asset that we have in our community, and many of us really love it and enjoy it. And I really would like to see a more focused effort on open space, on recreation opportunities, on areas other than camp and your adult education programs at the center. So with that, I'll let you go.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other questions or comments for Luke? Luke, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to H2, next PNR Commission meeting, June 23rd. It's coming up. Okay. We'll move to item H, board member items of interest, requests for future agenda items. Does anyone from the board have anything to request?
Maybe an update on how the first session of camps went, which you're going to give us anyways, so there's no real point in asking for it, but I'm stating it.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I have something I hope will go fairly briefly. And I recognize that I am one member of this board. I am not trying to dictate anything, but while we generally refrain from discussing matters that are outside the subject matter jurisdiction of this this district, I believe current events warrant an exception. The most recent killings of 6 Black men at the hands of police after so many like events over the years have ignited demands for justice for Black people in our state, our nation, and beyond. In our district, which is predominantly white, many people participated in protests and use common nonviolent means of protest and issue recognition by drawing slogans in chalk, including Black Lives Matter, which is the central theme and focus on local sidewalks to express their support. One such action by a number of our citizens was met with a tirade of verbal abuse, which has been well publicized. After that incident, I was encouraged to see that many more members of our district and wider community came together to demonstrate what I believe is a more current and prevalent community attitude of support for Black people everywhere. As a white male citizen, I have long imagined myself in situations that are foreign to me, but very real for Black people throughout our country, and I support the efforts to correct these wrongs. What I'd like to recommend, or what I'd like to ask of our staff, as time permits during the current pandemic, if they could create a statement of support for this crucial effort and present it for the board to consider if we want to adopt a statement of support that will reflect the majority of our community, provoke reflection to others, and can be adopted by our board. And that's all I have. Anybody want to comment?
I support that.
Okay, does anyone have any other items of interest or future agenda items? Okay, I'll open it up to the public. Steve.
Yeah, couple things. First of all, thanks, Jeff, for your concern of the protest. I think it was great that people got out and expressed their frustration. However, that actually turned into a pretty ugly incident. First with the gentleman, I don't know, his name's all over Facebook and Nextdoor from what I understand. He acted completely inappropriately. However, he was terrorized, and I gotta say, it shook me to see basically what I consider a mob go after him. From what I understand, there were people outside his condo demanding that he come out of his house, and just imagine, being that person. I guess, I have no problem supporting, I was horrified as anyone with the death of Mr. Floyd, but, the subsequent events, the rioting, the looting, and what I think is just absolutely barbaric behavior and from people in the name of justice really doesn't deserve our support. I don't want to go far as to censor it, but just to say that, we are an inclusive community, I think is adequate, and that we shouldn't really try to, weigh in on this one particular issue. It's just really not in our bailiwick. I mean, people, I don't think anyone was against Mr. Floyd, but there is quite a bit of different feelings as far as what transpired, during the rioting and looting. So please, if you're gonna put out a statement, make sure it's inclusive and really doesn't, maybe speaking to Mr. Floyd, but to go any larger than that, I think is going to create maybe a little bit of ill feeling in the community.
I understand. Thank you, Stephen. Sivan?
I would like to clarify that most of the people have been documented. The ones that were doing the looting weren't actually people that have been out protesting for Black Lives Matter, and that those were instigators who came in. And I greatly urge our district to stand up and say the right thing, even if it does make our community slightly uncomfortable, because this is the point at which we need to discuss it, especially since we are a mostly white community who does have some of our community who is feeling this in a day-to-day where they are not just slightly uncomfortable, but extremely uncomfortable, feeling unwelcomed and unwanted. So I support Jeff in his request for a statement, and I hope that it is as strongly worded as we can go.
Thank you, Siobhan. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. Our favorite topic. Motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
I motion to
Bill.
adjourn.
Bill held up his hand.
Would it be so moved?
So
You
moved.
can say that too. And who seconded?
I'll second. Sivan will second.
Sivan will second. Okay. Tiffany?
Finally, Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oysterman.
Sorry, I muted myself.
That's okay. Director Perry
Aye.
and Director Shea.
Aye.
I guess that was unanimous too.
Yeah.
I just wanted to close by saying, Leah, I thought you've provided some really interesting changes in background during the meeting. That was very entertaining.
Thank you. That was the backyard. It's really hot upstairs here.
Well, so much for the second Zoom meeting. Thank you all for your attendance. Very much appreciated. I hope we'll all talk soon.
Good night,
Thank you,
all.
everybody.
Stay safe, everyone.
Be safe.
Good night.
Good night, thanks.